All right, hey, I'm here to talk about Lidless. It's a Lidless eye wreathed in webcams. So basically the whole idea being you have a place that people like to go, but they don't are not always there. And when they're not there, they don't know what's going on there. And you can just put up a webcam stream. That's something that if you want to check it, you really have to spend some time to figure out what's going on. You have to look in and you see for like, now you have like what happening this very second. And you have to actually like think and process visual images, and that's way too much work for us human beings. And you want to be at the place, and you want to be there when there's people there, or maybe you want to be there when there aren't people there, if it's like a common workspace, for instance. And I thought of this idea when I was at Pumping Station 1. It's a Chicago's Hackerspace. And I thought, well, I wanted to be here when I want to be here, and that is not when there's no one there, because I don't generally use the wood shop and all that other stuff, so I want to be there when there's other people around. But unless I'm there, I don't know if anyone's there at this time. So I thought, hold on, that's sort of annoying, and I forgot about it. But then I realized, once I got on the mailing list and all this stuff, that people would email the mailing list saying, is there anyone there? Like, you're emailing to find out if there's anyone there. This reminds me of a scene from the empty crowd. But, and they come into the IRC channel and they say, is there anyone there? We're like, most of us aren't there, so how would we know? Or there's no one there who's on IRC, and now you're talking into a complete vacuum. Or they don't even bother finding out or going because maybe it will be lame. And they think, that's no good, I don't want to do that. Maybe it'll be a waste of my time and I'll have walked all the way down the street or taken the train, and my time is so valuable that I really just can't get away from my Facebook. So here's a kitten, and this is how they feel. They're just like, can we get these lights to be gone? That'd be cool. We can't? All right, that's fine. Because you can't really see the kitten, much like how you can't see the place you're not at. Oh, we can. Excellent. Let's go back to the kitten for a moment. See, it's pretty cute. Oh, can we see the speaker? Can we see me? We can't. Let's fix that light thing. Yeah. Yeah. I would have got some LEDs on my head if I'd known this would happen. Anyway, that was a nice cat, but what are you going to do about it? Not the cat, the problem we have at hand. So you solve it with Python, obviously, because that's how we solve problems around here, and we use Python. So you have these webcams, and we did have one webcam. So I thought, well, I can buy more webcams. That doesn't really solve the problem, so I thought, there's a thing called OpenCV, and you can just like connect it up to stuff, and it knows, right? Well, that's not really true at all. It only works on Mac that way. So I thought, I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. So the first step is that it doesn't work, and you can't just use it like that. There's no like, tell me if the video stream is hopping. There's no hopping function, unfortunately. That would be, actually, I could probably like turn this into that and put it in OpenCV, but I'm greedy and I want to keep it in my project. So anyway, I'm going to tell you about it. So hold on. First I thought, you probably have no idea what's going on here. So I'm just going to leave it there and you can stare into that static for a second. So basically I thought, we have to figure out whether the whole part of the screen is moving. The first thing you can do is say, how much of the screen is taken up by things happening? So the algorithm I came down to after a bunch of wish-washy bullshit that you don't want to hear about was that I would filter it using median filter to smooth out the JPEG artifacts, because I'm using motion JPEG here, and as you may know, it looks sort of terrible most of the time. So this is what happens if you do an edge detect before you get rid of JPEG noise. Not very useful, as you may have been able to determine, because you can't tell what's going on there at all. And if the lights were down, which they're not, you'd actually see a bunch of edges here, which is just a photo taken of something that you don't recognize anyway. So anyway, there's a bunch of lines here. So, well, we could, are you the remote control now? Wrong button. Yeah. One of these kills me, we're going to have a problem. See, now this is like a column, and that's part of a ceiling, and there's some stuff hanging off it. And really, this is not coming through very well. In any case, those white dots are the edges between brightnesses and colors. So maybe you can see me now? Yeah, you can. So what I wanted to do was take these edges, and this really is just an array, if you think about it. This is an array of bits, like everything is, if you think about it. So I cut it into little squares, and I counted the little white dots in each square for a frame. Save those numbers, wait a second, get another frame, count them, and then if enough of the white dots change in one spot, that means something had an edge and now it doesn't because something flat in the middle. So if someone walking across the room goes by, those little spots where they were and weren't will be marked as something happened here. because there's been a change that's occurred. So what I decided to do was, instead of just saying, what changes occurred in this very frame? That's sort of useless, because that means you're just opening your eye for a second and you saw something move, and you're going to be jittering all over the place. The number will not be consistent at all if you say how much of the screen is changing, because it isn't like everyone moves just when you decide to do this. So what I did was I made a little buffer, which is another array of numbers, where just squares this time, the bigger squares that I chopped it up into. And I said, how long has it been since each of these squares changed? And then I can just do a query over that by just searching over that array and saying, in the last 2 minutes, how many of these subsections of the screen have had something happen in them? And enough things to happen so it's not just like a number on a digital clock changing, because that's just noise, much like that. Well, that, yeah. Anyway, so now I have a number. But as we all know, just having a number really doesn't mean anything, because instantaneous number that represents how much is going on in a space doesn't really mean anything. So it really matters like what a normal number is. What does it mean when you see 40%? Does 40% mean that there's 40% of the room is taken up by people sitting down? What does that mean? So really you have to think about over time and trends, because a number just by itself really will not tell anyone anything. Someone's not going to be like, 17, I'm on it. They're not going to be interested. So you really have to, well, 42 actually does come up every once in a while, but not out of any particular interest. So you have to look at historical data. So I went and I added in recording. So every minute I record. And this was a screenshot I took from last night. So it was at night and there was nobody there. But as you can see, this is Pumping Station 1's weekly meeting, this peak here. And you can see every single room is busy at that time. This is the weekend. It got sort of low, actually, which is surprising, considering that there were people here and there, but mostly we were sitting down working on projects, so nothing big happened. This was like, there were like 50 people we'd never seen before. That's when you see a big peak. So if you look at that, you think, well, now I have a web interface. That's great. So I decided to, I mean, it's pretty clear from this that you all know that. So here's a puppy. So really, you have something that can understand how busy a room is. Even if it's just a number, over time, people can understand a number if you give it a trend and a pattern. You see that, and now you know what the numbers mean, because you've seen what they've done over a period of time in one glance. So I added in historical data, and it's all based on a REST API. So there's a Tornado web server running in there that really that graph was all put through the REST API. It's the same API that populates the whole interface. Every single part of the data that made up the entire page was built based on JSON responses from the REST server. So it also has an IRC interface, which I might have time to show you in a little while. It sort of does clustering, although I have to do some patches before it'll work multi-machine. It does work multi-Python process because the GIL is sort of a bastard, and no one particularly likes it. And I avoided it by using Xerom, the message bus software, for passing back and forth information about the current data. Because really the historical data is only usable, only needed by the thread that writes it, and the graphical interface web server threads that pass off historical analysis. So based on that, I can say, okay, I can see all this information. People can use it in any form they want because it's REST API and it's public and documented. Holy shit. And it actually works with ZoneMinder, because that was the first thing I did. I didn't really know what motion JPEG was when I started. I just looked at a hex dump of a wget of a ZoneMinder feed, and I thought, it's a weird format, and I figured out how to unframe it and all that. But ZoneMinder actually does this strange thing with authentication where, unless you're aware of how they store their passwords, making a session token is a bit of a pain, so I actually ended up writing a little implementation of that. So you just have to give the ZoneMinder auth secret in the config along with username and password, and it will be able to create those for you. Serial alerts are another thing I did because, well, I wanted to know when lunch showed up at work. You get to define a little JSON stanza, because the whole config is JSON. You just say, make a camera, make a camera, make a camera, make a web server, make an IRC server, and I added something called an alert, where you get to say, hey, if it goes above 25% on this camera for this many minutes, tell this string to the IRC channel that you're on. And so basically it just says lunch particle detected, Captain, because I'm in the part of the building where I can't actually see when lunch comes in, so I want to be informed about this and not get cold lunch, because cold lunch is no good. But in any case, there's a bunny, because we all like cute animals. I really I was this close to just making my slides be a bunch of bunny pictures. But in the end, I decided that some slides would be actually helpful. All right, so I'm going to whiteboard this if we can get the lights going. Because the internals, just looking at code is a little bit of a pain, and I probably should eventually make a nice Visio version of this that is all pretty and UML'd up, so you can see what the overall structure of the code and data flow and all that is without actually, how do I turn the projector off? I have no idea how to do that. I'm assuming it's going to happen. All right, so to start out with, we have a little thread or a module called ZMStream, named after ZoneMinder, which takes little frames, JPEG, and they come out. And every second, I get a frame coming across a queue. And this goes into OpenCV. And this does a whole bunch of steps in OpenCV because you have to do a median filter, canny edge detect, and then you have to iterate over the big array of numbers you get out of that. And after I have that, I just have a number, say 5%. And I have another thread over here that just stores it in history. And that's really just very simple. Apps SQLite has a couple little things on top of it, so it can store it. And on top, now I have over here on the side, just imagine this is all one camera. So this is a percept, I call it. And this is a history that goes with the percept. And then over here, I have an IRC interface, which can really just query all the cameras. It's very simple. All it will do is will tell you, hey, what are all the percentages on all of the camera feeds? Then you have another thing called just a web. I really go very simple in names of things. That talks to this and can pull stuff from history as well. So it can pull out very exact current data to serve over the web, over JSON. Or it can say, hey, I need the last hour in a histogram. Or not a histogram, but bin that and average, because the recording intervals may not line up exactly, and we want a pretty graph. Give me a pile of timestamps and numbers to make into a graph, or whatever you want to do with it. It doesn't have to be a graph. So I'm not going to go into super detail unless you really ask for it about the internals of how the caching proxy works, because I was actually having problems with the... So is ZoneMinder running in your camera? Oh, ZoneMinder is a piece of software written in PHP, I believe. It's a whole bunch of other things, not even necessarily on the same server. Because Motion JPEG really is, you make an HTTP request, and it starts out with a little, and then it just streams using a binary chunking protocol, or actually it's ASCII mostly. It looks sort of like HTTP, but it's not, of frame after frame after frame of JPEGs. So really the only thing that's different between talking to just a little web camera that does Motion JPEG and talking to ZoneMinder, which is just running another server. Either way, they have a URL. And the only difference is how it sends the authentication string. And a little bit in how you configure it, where you just give one more option to say, the ZoneMinder instance has this authentication secret used in its config, so you can generate your own little tokens instead of having to go into ZoneMinder, right-click on the image, get URL, take out a bunch of rubbish that will break it, and then pass it in. And then as soon as that expires, you have to update your config file in order to get this thing to work again. Because that's very irritating. I don't know if anyone else has tried to consume Motion JPEG that comes out of ZoneMinder. It's not fun at all. So I can actually show that little bit of code in a minute. But basically, I have web here, and I have web proxy as well. I have proxy mode web that can actually balance between multiple web servers in a system where you have multiple Python processes. Some of them are running certain percepts. Some of them are running different percepts. So one process handles two cameras, the other one handles the other two. And then proxy mode can be running over here using the same config file. And if you set up proxy mode auto, it knows which IPs and ports, or just ports, because I haven't done multi-system stuff yet. It knows which ones to proxy. So you can actually run a multi-process Python server, basically, because it's an async proxy, all using Tornado. So you can avoid the issue of, man, this doesn't fit in one Python process because the GIL is ruining everything. Even if you have 8 processes, you can end up with a problem where you just can't do it fast enough, and everything goes to hell. So another fun thing about using proxy is that it will automatically understand the URLs that you're using in the API, and once it does, it can say, okay, this is an hour worth of data you requested. I can keep that for 2 minutes. That graph can lag a little bit the timestamps are on there. It doesn't presume that the timestamp is now. It tells you what timestamps it's giving you. If you're not happy with it, you know that. So it can actually avoid overloading the SQLite database. And really, I should be using Postgres or something, but haven't got to that. In any case, I'm using SQLite at the moment, so that's a little bit not. It's light. That's the problem. It is not heavy enough. So this is the overall structure of the code. But I was going to dive into Q&A and showing off code, and when we got tired of those, we'll go on to the next thing. So, any other questions, or should we go look at specific code? Or
any particular reason for selecting Tornado?
It is a nice Python web server. Nice by my definition of nice. Can we get this projector going again easily? Is there a button? Yeah. But in any case, I chose Tornado because it lets you. It does its own web server internally. It's completely async. It gives you a callback pool. It also has the cool part about it is that it's like twisted, but it doesn't try to take your soul out and beat it into the ground repeatedly with a hammer. I don't really like twisted, in case that didn't come across. But in any case, I chose Tornado because it lets me use the async HTTP client or async. There's actually a cool little decorator called Twisted or Tornado. You've got in my brain here. Tornado.web.async, I think it is. You'll have to look it up in the documentation, or we can actually just look at it in a minute when it turns on and starts working. But it lets me use the same pile of stuff to. Where's my code? All right. And can we make the lights go? Oh, geez. It seems like most interest is around the web part, so I will show off the web part. Whoop. So really, it's relatively simple. I pull in a bunch of stuff. Concurrent.futures is really handy, by the way. Big fonts. Does Control Plus work in gedit? No, it does not. Edit, preferences, fonts and colors. Man, I haven't even looked at this in. No, wrong way. I don't understand why down goes up and up goes down. 24. I don't know if my line wrap style is that good. All right. Oh, this is nice. Anyway, this is for doing the caching rules, as you might have guessed, because it's checking so it can really know what options to do there. And this is really just the part. This is used in the auto mode proxy, so you can just say, just find me. A role is what I call a specific process in the multiprocessing system, where I say, hey, you're the web server, and all the different parts of the system, like the percept, or the IRC module, or the web, or the web proxy, you give each one of those a role, and the default is default. And if you don't give one, it runs all the ones that are under default. So if you don't think about it at all, it just does them all, until you have performance problems and you read the documentation like you should have in the first place. So all this is just about saying, okay, which one of these cameras is on which, so I can find the web proxy to go to. Blah, blah, blah. This is all proxy stuff and end up at the top somehow. This is why I didn't want the font size to be this big. But in any case, I think it's wrapping. This is really ruining my tabbing. Proxy caching handler, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have a really solid point right there. Yeah, I think I can go smaller. I don't know who said 24, but it's your fault. Let's go back to 18. Is that good?
14, even numbers. 16
You guys decide. 16. All right, yeah, 16. That's slightly better. We can actually see stuff. So I just made a little thing called JSON handler where you say, hey, there's the decorator we're talking about, where you get to say, hey, just do this, and when I'm done, handle response. And handle response here just says, take it out of the futures object, which is just saying, I'll eventually have a result for you. I haven't finished it yet. When I finish it, I'll do a callback for you, which is really what we're doing here. Result.done callback right there. So this is the beauty of the async part. You get to say, stop hanging up the thread. We're not going to wait for that database query to finish. We're going to just go back to processing web requests, and when we're done here, we're done here. Another thing I added was something that I was surprised I hadn't done in the first place, where if there's a web request already underway for a URL, since there's no users or anything like that, a URL is unique for what the request is going to be. If there's already one being processed, there's absolutely no need to start another one. Just make it so the same response gets sent back to the other guy who just got added to the queue of people who want that URL, which really actually improved performance almost as much as the caching did. Because two people request the same database operation and the other one's already running, and there's no authentication or users going on, no matter who's requesting it, it's the same thing. So it doesn't make a difference. So I can give the same exact HTTP response to every single one of them, and nothing will go wrong because there's no sessions, there's no users, no authentication. Nobody has a session. It's all just the same. So if a URL is requested, it's the same resource. These are all handlers to say, okay, just give me the list of cameras, or give me the specific ratio here. And it actually does work on capabilities, so you actually can get back a list of operations that will work. It's very RESTful. I think that's what they call that. See, it's very simple because that's a JSON handler. All I have to do is return a number, and it will get wrapped up in a nice little response and sent back. Is this a good enough coverage of, well, this is just a very obvious, make a set of bins, average numbers into them, a bunch of math. Is there anything else that y'all would like to see, like the image recognition or anything else?
I have a general question.
Yeah.
So if I went to PS1 and stuck a strobe light in there, would that totally mess it up, or would it?
I would find it. Actually, that's a good question, because we do have some strobe lights that we use for a Halloween party, and I don't know what the result was. I guess I could point one at it. One thing that I find myself doing when I want to test it is I found myself running around in circles with my arms waving in the air, and somehow people have fully realized that this is normal by now. An easier way that I discovered about a month after I started running in circles was I can just take a big piece of cardboard, hold it up in front of the camera for a second, and then put it back down. Because the whole picture changes, and that completely does what I wanted to test. So, the running in circles was fun, though.
Run across the screen and wave your arms again. Yeah, there we go.
Like that?
Excellent.
Excellent. That's for posterity, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Here is the. Oh, it's sort of based on.
So when you set up an alert,
Yeah.
do you have to look at the previous percentages and then decide on your own what a good threshold is?
Yes, you do. It does not automatically determine a threshold that's crazy high, because I want to make it so there's very little smarts going on here. Like, for instance, the lunch alert. I ended up taking the camera and tilting it here and making it so it actually couldn't see the whole kitchen. It could only see the part with the table because I wanted an alert there. But that's the only purpose there ever was for that install.
Really low noise.
Pretty low noise, yeah.
Okay.
I can actually load up, well, I could if the Wi-Fi worked. But here is the... Well, it would work if I went and got into Wi-Fi settings instead of doing all the obvious parts. So really, another cool thing that I could show you is a visual representation of depth buffer. Well, it's a very boring one at the moment, but as you can see, that right there, that was someone walking. Because that was, 0 seconds, and I reversed it because I wanted bright to be activity, not nothing happened for the last 9 years. So this was just what happens if someone walks across the screen. It's a little bit flipped at the moment. I'm not sure how that happened. But that's the motion buffer of the, because really OpenCV lets you treat something as either an image or an array. So I just said, okay, I have an image, and now I'm just using subscripts to get out pixels to do the counts. And this is the buffer I was using, because I decided I may as well use an OpenCV array to store those history numbers instead of any particular other set of Python stuff, because I already have a bunch of these things lying around. I may as well use one. OpenCV is the Open Computer Vision Library. It's from some university or something. I don't recall exactly where it came from, but it lets you treat transforms on images sort of similar to how like you can do math operations. It really treats the image as a first-class mathematical citizen and lets you take all those things like edge detection, blurring, color scheme changing, all that other stuff. Just treat it as just functions on objects instead of having to implement them all as big arrays of numbers as you would end up doing. Like if you wanted to do some kind of algorithm and you didn't have a library, you'd look up the algorithm in a paper somewhere or in your textbook, and then you'd go through and you'd implement it, and then you'd have to test it to make sure you did it right and all this other stuff. But instead, you have this huge library of recognition algorithms that already exist and you can just use. So it's quite handy. They also use all sorts of SSE on the CPU, they do optimization for you as well, which is nice. I've actually considered switching up to using just less pixels of the image, because I'm pretty sure my algorithm would hold, even if I scaled it down like way smaller than it is. But I haven't tested it because really, I only spent about a week on the vision recognition because OpenCV made it so easy to do that. It was just, I need to understand what these mathematical operations are, and now I don't have to implement them, but once I understand which ones I need to use, I can just plug them all together, and now I have some results that I can do some simple counting on, and I can turn that into something that maps to busyness. And I really think that's widely applicable to other things as well, not just vision.
Did you try using Pill?
I did not try using Pill, actually. Although I did briefly try to find a way to use Pill as a middle layer between having a string that is a JPEG frame and an OpenCV image, because I was unable to find a OpenCV function for, I already have a string, I don't need to take this out of a file. Just please, just take this data I have and turn it into an image. Actually, I'm writing them to temporary files right now because OpenCV doesn't really expect you to be doing what I'm doing, I don't think. Maybe there's a way, I don't know.
Okay, so when I did something similar to that, it seems that everybody's very comfortable with the string IO thing that turns us.
It takes file names, not file handles. Yeah. That might just be the Python interface, but yep. Yeah, you know, if it hadn't taken me literally 30 seconds to work around the problem, I probably would have forked it. But I would probably still be working on my OpenCV fork instead of having done anything, though. That's the problem of just forking every library you see. Oh, this is actually a much better representation. How did I get here? Well, here it is. That is. Just tell me what you see, because this is the edge detector I'm using. It is PS1. This is a bunch of tables. You don't see Tim. Too far. Too far.
Table with laptops, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fan. There's some other tables. That's an office chair. See, these are the edges that I should have been showing you earlier, and somehow my image browser has just magically shown them to me. So as you can guess, if you see someone walking across, and I actually for a while was making something that would display it every time, and I had it on my laptop, and we were all having fun, like trying to make our shapes show up as we walked in front of the table and stuff. But as you can see, this is I think that might be me. Maybe. I can't tell for sure. It's a little bit impressionistic. So that is a white square, and that is back to where we were supposed to be. So any other questions? You rotated your beer. I thought that was a sign of questioning.
Yeah, I use something sort of like this. I think edge detection is a really expensive function.
You know, that may be why I had to do multiprocessing. Maybe. It's a possibility there.
Something sort of like this for a security system.
Really?
All these internet cameras, and I just get JPEGs, and I just subtract. I use Pill.
You subtract one from the other.
One frame from the other, and
Uh-huh.
standard deviation across them, and then some of them I have a mask.
That sounds like another way.
And then if there's from one frame to another more than a 5 or 10% change in the standard deviation, something.
You know, I should actually try just doing the median filter, then because I don't know how noisy your JPEGs are. Mine are pretty noisy. When the lights go down, my software becomes almost useless. I should probably work on that. It's a GitHub issue, so if anyone wants to fix that. Add an infrared camera. That was a thought that people had. I could take apart the cameras and take out the little filter that does that, or something like that.
But pill goes to C code.
Yeah.
Doesn't use the GPU.
It's sort of funny because every once in a while I think maybe I should go back and make the vision recognition part slightly less intensive and probably better. So I'll look into doing a subtraction there because I never actually did that step. I assumed that this was a good way, and it sort of works. And then I went on to doing things like clustering and proxying and IRC and alerts instead of doing more cooler vision recognition, which I probably should get back to.
You're learning more this way.
I am. No, I meant from telling people this and then having them just tell me stuff. I learned from that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try
Now we're all both going down the learning rabbit hole, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
It's always easier to sit out here and call BS when you have an actual.
So OpenCV is on Mac, or is it on Linux?
The server, I'm doing it all on Linux. I'm pretty sure it's totally cross-platform now. I think it works on everything.
I feel like Bill Mania was here maybe 6 or 7 months ago with the
Yeah, he was.
talking about it. There's like a C++ library and then a Python API for it.
Yeah. I actually went to that hoping that he would tell me how to do this. But he didn't know, so I ended up having to figure it out the slow and probably CPU-intensive way.
Maybe if you brought an orange cone in as everyone.
You know, I really should I should bring up a vote next Tuesday. Everyone must carry an orange cone on their head at all times. I could get a really solid number if people all wore orange cones. What's this mean? I'm not getting this. Oh, that's.
The whole Occupy thing.
I'm really offended. It hurts, Carl. It hurts. Oh, I don't know what you two are doing, but. Yeah. It looks like we're out of questions. A demonstration? That requires internet. And yeah, who would use Linux at an open source meetup?
So this is on the pumping station website.
Oh, it's apples and oranges, right?
That's the one that.
That's right now.
If you go to tenant too, I can give you the password for that temporarily. There's also a tenant one that works with Linux.
I think how am I on a Wi-Fi already? I am. It happens. See, Linux is easy, guys.
This is the part where you have to log out.
So if you go to,
Oh, it's going to ask me to restore my session. I'm using Chrome.
it might be easier if you go to Nexus tenant instead of the guest, and I'll give you the password.
Sure.
And it's
More
basically
networks.
espresso with instead of E3.
Oh.
No, just the first.
Just the first one. I guessed right the first time, and then I second guessed myself.
Only like partial accessors.
Ah. Yeah. Yeah. You know. No, you don't. No, you don't. Hey, that password does not work. Password not working. Hey. Please. TechNexus tenant, yeah. That did not work.
No, EXPR.
That's not how you spell espresso. There's no X in espresso. It's an ES.
You're right, but I don't know.
Oh, got it.
Did it work?
I don't know, maybe. May as well kill that. It's not going to work. Actually, it probably would have. I'm going to go back. Never mind. It's looking good. And I'm assuming that I don't have to do any web stuff for that. Yeah, it looks excellent. No, it's fine.
Yeah, no, you can. It just means you're trying to get a server to connect to your Wi-Fi. That's what that means. Yeah, actually, it's much easier just using WPA stuff. Yeah.
If you have the SSID.
Oh.
And the key. Yeah. And WPA.
See, yo, hey. Here is the, oh, holy shit. Electronics is busy.
Someone's soldering something.
Someone is soldering a lot, yeah. I don't think the strobe light is not actually stored in that room, so I would be surprised. As you can see, like SQLite is pretty light, and the Wi-Fi is pretty light as well. But I can show you the back end, which is much more interesting than all these pretty graphs anyway.
Send an email, ask who's in electronics.
Uh-oh. This is the numbers going through as it. These are the percepts coming out, and this is the process that runs the wood shop, and which is our wood shop, and space, which is like the main hangout room. And these are the numbers coming out of it. It looks like we're at about 10% for space right now. Every second, it's getting a frame. And right here, there's obviously at least 2 clients that are requesting the current number over the web here. That's the ratio handler that we saw earlier. Right here, this is the IRC connection over an extended period of time. Every once in a while, our internet goes down, it comes back up. Very exciting stuff there. I did. That's what that is. And here we have the proxying handler, which is getting, oh no, privacy violation, IP addresses. But in any case, these are the API requests coming in. And it looks like right there we had a couple little disconnections every once in a while. But those are people coming in and getting the ratio data. It looks like we have, this is the first guy right here. I recognize that IP address. The first day that I emailed our mailing list saying, hey, by the way, I built this thing. Here's a link to the GitHub, and here's the web page. And I didn't have it logging to the screen at the time for web requests, so I had no idea what anyone was doing. But about 5 days later, I said, I added graphs. And I sent out a screenshot. I got another screenshot back of some completely different graphs that went back further than mine did. And I'm like, well, hold on. What? He's like, I've been using your API. And that's how easy wreathed is, because I didn't even tell anyone there was an API, but he read the documentation on my GitHub, and he was using it before, he had graphs before I did. It was, yeah. Well, it's not that hard. REST makes documentation really, really easy, because there's not that much there. And that's completely different software. But in any case, that is the demo. I would like to be showing you, like, have a camera here and actually set it up live, but I didn't feel like trying to set up a network on the table, all that, because it would be too much. Hey. Again? Oh, it was on the first slide, which I will. It's a good idea. It's going to be on the wrong screen, isn't it? No, it's not. That is the first slide that has all the information that you seek. You're using a remote. Is that for me or the projector? Neither. Right. So yeah, it's all in GitHub. All the libraries that it depends on are either probably in your repositories, or I believe I actually, in my README, showed which versions will work. There's a compatibility list. You might end up, there are dependencies listed on several other libraries that I use. that are also in my GitHub, but there's links to them, so you won't have trouble finding all the dependencies. I would appreciate reports of whether it works, what you think I should do with it, patches, large sacks of unmarked 20s. Anything's fine. So it's all GPL, but I could probably be convinced to make it not GPL if someone needed it to be not GPL for some reason. Yeah, that's me. That's the software. So, yay. So? I heard a so.
Zone minder is something that public station 1 already has set up.
We did already have it set up. I'm going direct past it at this point.
Okay.
Except for one camera, which is on a USB directly into the zone minder, and I can't access it except through zone minder. Everything else is straight up IP cams that do motion JPEG. And I would like to eventually support stuff like video for Linux directly, but I started looking at a couple Python bindings for video for Linux and sort of just felt cold all over. And then went back to doing things that I don't hate. So if someone wants to provide, and I really would suggest if you want to do other things, other video sources, to put them, to try to contribute them to my ZMstream project, not this one, because I want to be able to use that one sort of agnostically without having to really hate myself. So the whole idea was originally, what's this format with streams, which was motion JPEG, and I didn't implement the zone minder stuff, and then I realized it was just motion JPEG, and I wasn't going to rename the project, and then I added the zone minder stuff, and now it just does zone minder and motion JPEG without it being a pain. And other sources going in there would make it even cooler, because then it would just be like, I have some video and I want to get frames of it, and I don't really care about any of the other details. Make it happen. What?
But not everything wants to appear like a zone minder stream.
Well, a set of JPEGs coming out as frames appear is probably enough for most things. And obviously, I'm not saying that every single video source in the world should go through my silly little ZMstream library. I'm just saying that if you wanted to add other sources, then that's where you'd want to put them. Because I don't want to have to use 2 different libraries in this project when I already have things that are doing that. Yeah. People are taking pictures of me. What is this?
For later.
Uh-oh. It's worrying.
You know, vlogging and stuff. Wow, guys.
The guy with the camera. Last time Eric said he didn't shoot it.
No, it's fine. He can't hurt me. He doesn't know where I live. Until he whoises my domain, then he does. I was going to do this, but then I realized the projector going up and down was a big production, so didn't want to bother turning it back on for that. Any other questions? /comments /rotten fruit? Cool.